A 6-year-old boy had to climb inside a chimney. Not to play, not to hide, and certainly not to rescue anyone. It was simply his job.
Every morning, before the sun had even risen, he crawled into a narrow, pitch-black tunnel, a space so tight that no grown adult could fit inside. If he became trapped, there was little anyone could do to save him. And the most shocking part? He wasn't the only one. Thousands of children once did this for a living.
Today, forcing a child to climb inside a chimney would be considered child abuse. The person responsible would almost certainly face criminal charges. But more than 200 years ago, it was perfectly legal. For many poor families, sending a child to work as a chimney sweep wasn't a choice. It was the only way to survive. This is the story of one of the cruelest professions in British history.
Now imagine, you're only 6 years old. Your legs are barely strong enough to run across a field. Yet every single day, you're expected to climb several stories high inside a chimney coated with thick black soot. There is no sunlight, no fresh air, only darkness, the smell of burned coal, and the sound of your own breathing. You can't stand up. You can't turn around. The only way forward is to push yourself upward using your elbows, your knees, and your back. If you slip, you could fall straight into the fireplace below. If you panic, you could become trapped. And if the fire underneath hasn't completely gone out, the heat could burn your skin. This isn't the plot of a horror movie. It was the daily reality for thousands of children in Britain during the 18th and early 19th centuries.
But how did such a terrifying job ever become normal? To answer that question, we have to travel back in time. Long before electricity, central heating, or modern furnaces, almost every home in Britain relied on coal-fired fireplaces for warmth. Throughout the winter, smoke constantly traveled through brick chimneys. Over time, a thick layer of soot built up inside. If those chimneys weren't cleaned regularly, a single spark could ignite the soot and set the entire house on fire. Cleaning chimneys wasn't optional, it was essential. At first, people tried using long wooden poles to scrape away the soot.
But there was a problem. Most chimneys weren't built in a straight line. They twisted through the walls, they bent around corners, and they became narrower the higher they went. No adult could squeeze through them. So someone came up with a simple and horrifying solution. If adults couldn't fit, children could. Small, thin, easy to control. They became the perfect workers. And with that, one of the darkest professions of the Industrial Revolution was born.
Not every chimney sweep was an orphan. Many came from families so poor their parents simply couldn't afford to feed them. In exchange for a small payment, their children were apprenticed to master chimney sweeps. On paper, they were learning a trade. In reality, they were entering a life of exhausting labor. Others were orphans, sent from workhouses to chimney sweep masters. Most of them had no choice. Their masters provided food, a place to sleep, and the promise of teaching them a skill. In return, the children worked from before sunrise until late into the evening, day after day, year after year. For many of them, this wasn't just a job, it was their entire childhood. But what did a normal day actually look like for a 6-year-old chimney sweep? To find out, let's follow one young boy on a cold winter morning in the streets of London. To understand why this became one of the cruelest professions in history, let's follow an ordinary day in the life of a 6-year-old chimney. The sun hasn't risen yet. The streets of London are still covered in cold morning fog. The city is almost silent. Only the distant sound of horses' hooves echo through the empty streets. While most children are still asleep, a small boy is already awake. Not for breakfast, not for school, but for work. He pulls on the same worn-out clothes, still stained black with soot from the day before. His shoes are thin, barely protecting his feet from the freezing stone streets. His hands are covered with cuts and scars. Months of crawling through narrow brick chimneys have turned the skin on his elbows and knees into thick, hardened calluses. His master hands him a small brush, a metal scraper, and a sack for collecting soot. No words of encouragement, no smile, just 2 simple words.
Let's go.
Together, they walk through London's quiet streets. Their first stop is the home of a wealthy family. A servant opens the front door and leads them into the sitting room. The fireplace is cold now. Last night's fire has long gone out. But inside the chimney, a thick layer of soot still clings to the bricks. The homeowner steps aside. The master looks at the boy and silently nods. It's time. The boy removes his jacket, takes one deep breath, then lowers himself into the fireplace. Within seconds, he disappears into complete darkness.
Inside the chimney, there is no light, no fresh air, only the smell of burnt coal and walls coated in thick black soot. The space is so narrow, he can't stand. He can't even turn around. The only way forward is upward. He presses his elbows against one side of the chimney, his knees against the other. His back pushes against the bricks behind him. Slowly, inch by inch, he forces himself higher. Every movement scrapes his skin against the rough brick walls. Soot falls into his hair, onto his face, into his eyes, into his mouth. And with every breath, more black dust settles deep inside his lungs. Within minutes, he begins to cough. But there isn't enough room to stop. There isn't enough room to rest. There is only one choice. Keep climbing.
The chimneys of that time were rarely straight. Many twisted sharply through the walls before reaching the roof. Every bend became another obstacle. The boy twists his shoulders, pulls one knee beneath him, presses his chest against the bricks, then slowly forces his body around the corner. Sometimes, both shoulders become wedged against the walls. Sometimes, he has to hold his breath, just to squeeze through. If he climbs too fast, he risks becoming trapped. If he stops for too long, his master begins to lose patience. Historical records describe masters who shouted at frightened children or pushed long poles up the chimney, forcing them to keep moving. Some accounts even describe straw or paper being lit beneath the fireplace, not to clean the chimney, but to frighten the child into climbing faster. Whether every story was true or not, these reports shocked the British public and helped expose the brutal reality of the profession.
Nearly 30 minutes later, the boy finally reaches the top of the chimney. For the first time that morning, he sees daylight. He takes a deep breath of fresh air before pulling out his small brush. Carefully, he scrapes away the thick layers of soot, sending black dust raining down the chimney below. His master waits beneath the fireplace, collecting every handful. Today, soot is little more than waste. But 2 centuries ago, it could be sold for use as fertilizer or in various industries. Every clean chimney meant more money for the master. For the boy, it meant only one thing: another climb, another chimney, another day survived. But the work isn't over. After this house, there is another, then another, and another. On busy days, a single child might climb inside more than 10 chimneys. By sunset, his hair is black with soot. His face is almost unrecognizable. His clothes are heavy with coal dust. His hands bleed. Every step hurts. Yet the next morning, he will do it all again, day after day, month after month, year after year.
But even that wasn't the highest price these children would pay.
But the worst part was never the chimneys themselves. It was what the job did to the children who climbed back out. At first, it was only a cough that refused to go away. Day after day, week after week. Most people ignored it. Back then, everyone assumed that coughing was simply part of being a chimney sweep. But with every breath, tiny particles of soot settled deeper inside their lungs. Day after day, month after month, year after year, their bodies were slowly being destroyed from the inside.
Many struggled to breathe. Some suffered caught into another chimney, and then another.
The damage didn't stop there. Their knees became swollen from crawling over rough brick. Their elbows hardened into thick layers of scar tissue. Years of squeezing through narrow passages left many with bent backs, crooked shoulders, and permanent joint pain. The cuts and bruises on their skin eventually healed, but the damage beneath the surface never truly disappeared. For many former chimney sweeps, those injuries lasted a lifetime.
Then doctors began noticing something unusual. Many chimney sweeps, still young men, were developing the same rare form of cancer. In 1775, British surgeon Percival Pott published groundbreaking research. He concluded that years of exposure to soot were responsible for the disease. It was one of the first times in history that anyone had linked cancer to a person's occupation. Today, that idea seems obvious, but in the 18th century, it changed the way people understood workplace health forever.
As more people learned the truth, public opinion slowly began to change. Doctors spoke out. Newspapers published disturbing reports. Social reformers demanded stronger laws to protect children. But progress was painfully slow. Many master sweeps insisted there was no other way. They argued that only small children could fit inside the narrow chimneys. As long as people believed that, the practice continued. Then, in 1875, everything changed. A 12-year-old boy named George Brewster was sent to clean an extremely narrow chimney. Just like countless children before him, he climbed inside. But this time, he never came back out. George became trapped. Rescuers desperately tried to reach him. They even broke apart sections of the chimney. But it was too late. The 12-year-old boy died inside the place where he had been sent to work. News of his death spread quickly across Britain. Newspapers carried the story. The public was horrified. People began asking a question that could no longer be ignored. How many more children had to die before this profession finally came to an end?
The government was forced to act. Existing laws were strengthened. The use of children as climbing chimney sweeps was finally brought to an end. At the same time, new chimney cleaning brushes, long flexible rods, and safer equipment became widely available. Machines replaced children. A profession that had existed for centuries slowly disappeared. Today, chimney sweeps still exist in parts of Britain, but they wear protective equipment, they use modern tools, and no child is expected to risk their life inside a narrow brick chimney. What was once considered ordinary is now remembered as one of the darkest chapters in the history of child labor.
When people look at the old brick chimneys that still stand across Britain today, few realize what those walls once witnessed. Thousands of children, climbing through darkness, breathing in soot, risking their lives simply to earn a living. Most of their names have been forgotten. Few monuments, few memorials, but their suffering changed history. Their stories helped reshape labor laws, improve workplace safety, and protect future generations of children from the same fate. The story of the climbing boys is more than a forgotten profession. It is a reminder of how easily childhood can be sacrificed when poverty and profit are placed above human life. Thankfully, this is one profession the world chose to leave behind.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoy discovering the forgotten professions, strange jobs, and hidden stories that shaped history, consider subscribing to the channel. There are many more stories waiting to be uncovered, and we'll see you in the next one.